Listen, I've been working at the Galactic Interspecies Academy for about 7 cycles now, and I thought I'd seen everything. I mean, everything. I've watched Claraxians try to explain the concept of personal space to Eudorian blob creatures. I've seen Zenthari attempt to teach mathematics to species that perceive reality in 17 dimensions. I even witnessed the Great Cafeteria Incident of Cycle 4782. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Where someone introduced fermented Keplerian fruit to the menu, and 3 entire decks had to be evacuated. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day Instructor Velthar decided to demonstrate obedience training with the lichen cubs. Now, before we get into this beautiful disaster, let me set the scene. The Galactic Interspecies Academy, or GIA, as literally nobody calls it except the brochures, is essentially a massive space station where various species send their young to learn about other cultures, develop diplomatic skills, and theoretically not start interstellar incidents. Theoretically being the key word there. The lichens are this warrior species from the Andromeda sector. Picture if wolves decided to evolve into 8-foot-tall bipedal beings with a rigid honor code and an absolutely hilarious inability to understand sarcasm. Their cubs, the ones sent to the academy, are basically teenagers. Furry, clawed, fanged teenagers who could bench press a shuttlecraft, but also giggle at bodily function jokes. Universal constant, that last part. Every species thinks farts are funny. Trust me on this. So there I was, walking down Corridor 7 Blue, minding my own business, heading to the cafeteria because it was Taco Tuesday. Yes, even in space, Taco Tuesday is sacred. Don't ask me how tacos became a universal constant. That's a whole other story involving humans, cultural exportation, and what the diplomatic corps calls aggressive food marketing. I'm human, by the way. Name's Derek Martinez, head of the Cultural Exchange Department, which is basically a fancy title for the guy who gets called when someone accidentally insults someone else's deity or mistakes a religious ceremony for a dance-off. It happens more than you'd think. Anyway, I'm walking to get my tacos when I hear this commotion coming from Training Hall 6. Now, Training Hall 6 is usually pretty quiet. It's where they do the boring stuff like meditation techniques and conflict resolution. The only time it gets loud is when the Vraxians are practicing their war chants, and they only do that on Thursdays. But this was Tuesday, and something was clearly going sideways. I poked my head in, and the scene before me was, quite frankly, magnificent chaos. Instructor Velthar stood in the center of the hall. For those of you who haven't met a Velthari, imagine a 9-foot-tall praying mantis that decided to major in disappointed parent energy. They've got these massive compound eyes that somehow still manage to convey the emotion of, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, and 4 arms that they use primarily for dramatic gesturing. And boy, was Velthar gesturing. Surrounding him were 6 lichen cubs. I recognized them from the 3rd-year cohort. There was Krakus, the big one who looked like he could snap a tree in half, but spent most of his free time in the library reading romance novels. Seriously. I'd caught him crying over one once. Then there was Nyx, the female with the scar across her muzzle who was basically the group's ringleader. Thorak and Grimjaw were the twins, identical except Thorak had a chip in his left ear from some scuffle back home. Rending Claw, who everyone just called Rennie because his full ceremonial name took about 4 minutes to pronounce properly. And finally, Silverfang, the youngest of the group, who had this habit of tilting his head like a confused puppy whenever anyone used words with more than 3 syllables. All 6 of them were sitting in completely random spots around the hall, doing absolutely anything except what Velthar was clearly trying to get them to do. For the 16th time, Velthar was saying, his translator chip crackling with barely suppressed frustration. You will form a single line in front of me. This is a basic military formation. Your species invented military formations. Why are you all acting as if I have asked you to comprehend quantum string theory in interpretive dance? Krakus was lying on his back, apparently fascinated by the ceiling panels. Nyx was grooming her claws. The twins were engaged in what looked like an arm wrestling match. Rennie had somehow found a snack and was munching away contentedly, and Silverfang was chasing his own tail. I repeat, an 8-foot-tall apex predator was chasing his own tail. Cubs! Velthar tried again, all 4 arms now engaged in some kind of pleading gesture. This is a simple exercise in following instructions. You are to form a line, 1 cub behind another, in a row, linearly, sequentially arranged. How many synonyms must I employ before you comprehend? Nyx looked up from her claws. We comprehend fine, Instructor. Then, why? And I could actually hear the capital letters in Velthar's voice. Are you not in a line? Oh. Nyx tilted her head. You wanted us to do it. I had to press my hand over my mouth to keep from laughing. This was beautiful. This was art. Velthar's antennae quivered. In Velthari body language, that's the equivalent of a human's eye twitching. Yes. Yes, I wanted you to do it. That is generally how instructions work. I give them, you follow them. This is the foundational principle of every military in the galaxy. Huh, said Thorak, not looking away from his arm wrestling match with Grimjaw. That's a weird principle. It is not a weird principle. It is the principle. Your entire species is built on chain of command and hierarchy. Sure, Grimjaw grunted, slamming his brother's arm down. Back home, this isn't home. And there it was, the actual problem. See, the Lycans have this cultural thing. On their home world, cubs obey their pack leaders without question. It's instinctual, bred into them over millions of years of evolution. But here's the catch. Pack leaders are determined by a very specific set of criteria. Strength, obviously, combat prowess, tactical thinking, but most importantly, scent. I'm not kidding. Lycan hierarchy is literally determined by how you smell. And Velthar, being a Velthari, smelled like, well, according to one Lycan I asked once, like plant and mathematics, which apparently doesn't trigger any of the instinctual obedience responses. So to these cubs, Velthar wasn't a pack leader. He was just some random bug dude saying words at them. Velthar tried a different approach. Cubs, if you do not follow this instruction, I will be forced to report this as a failure in your behavioral adaptation scores. Kay, said Nyx, going back to her claws. Your parents will be notified. Cool. You may face disciplinary action. Neat. Velthar's antennae weren't just quivering now. They were doing full circles. You may not receive dessert privileges for a week. That at least got Silverfang to stop chasing his tail. He looked up, ears perked. No dessert? No dessert. Silverfang considered this for approximately 3 seconds, then went back to his tail. Worth it. I decided this was probably a good time to intervene before Velthar had some kind of compound eye stroke. Hey, Velthar, I called out, walking into the hall. Need a hand? Or, 4 extra ones? Oh, wait, you've already got those. Velthar spun around, all 4 arms going into what I'd learned to recognize as his exasperated gesture. Ah, Cultural Exchange Coordinator Martinez. Perfect timing. Perhaps you can explain to these young carnivores why following basic instructions is not, in fact, optional in an educational setting. I can try, I said, looking at the cubs. They all perked up a bit when they saw me. Humans have a weird reputation in the galaxy. We're not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the fastest. But we're stubborn as hell. We pack bond with literally anything. And apparently, we smell interesting. What seems to be the problem? What seems to be the problem? Velthar's voice went up about an octave. The problem is that I have been attempting to conduct a simple obedience exercise for 47 minutes, and these cubs have not followed a single command. Not one. I asked them to stand. They sat. I asked them to sit. They stood. I asked them to form a circle. They formed a triangle. A triangle. Do you know how hard it is to make a triangle with 6 individuals? Pretty hard, I admitted. That's some creative malicious compliance right there. It is not creative. It is infuriating. I am a level 9 instructor with 17 commendations for educational excellence. I have taught neural linguistics to crystalline entities. I have successfully explained the concept of personal identity to a hive mind. But these cubs, he pointed dramatically at the 6 lichens, these cubs are making me question my entire career. I glanced at the cubs. They were all watching me now with these bright, intelligent eyes. Oh yeah, they knew exactly what they were doing. So you want them in a line? I asked Velthar. Yes, a simple, single line. Got it. I turned to the cubs. Hey guys, how's it going? Good, said Nix, speaking for the group. Training is fun. I bet it is. Listen, I'm heading to the cafeteria after this. They've got those Terran tacos you guys liked last time. Beef ones with the spicy salsa. I was thinking of grabbing extra, maybe sharing with some friends. You know, people who help me out. 6 pairs of ears perked up immediately. But I'm really busy, I continued casually, and I don't have time to hang around if this training session is going to take forever. So here's the thing. I need you guys to show Instructor Velthar that lichens are smart, capable beings who definitely understand how to follow basic instructions. Can you do that for me? There was a moment of silence. Then Krakus said, What kind of tacos? The good kind, extra cheese. How many? How many can you eat? Many. Then many it is. I smiled. But only if we can wrap this up quick. I'm talking like next 2 minutes quick. Nick stood up, slowly, deliberately. What does the instructor want us to do? A line, Velthar said weakly, his antennae drooping. Just a simple line. I looked at the cubs. You heard him. Line formation. Show him what you've got. And just like that, 6 lichen cubs snapped into a perfect military formation. I'm talking textbook stuff. Single file, evenly spaced, shoulders back, eyes forward. It happened so fast that Velthar actually stumbled backward in surprise. There we go, I said, nodding approvingly. Look at that. Perfect line. Instructor Velthar, your thoughts? Velthar was staring at the cubs like they'd just performed actual magic. All 4 of his arms hung limply at his sides. But how? I've been trying for 47 minutes. Yeah, but see, you made one crucial mistake, I said, patting him on the shoulder. Well, on one of his shoulders. He had several to choose from. What mistake? What did I do wrong? You weren't offering tacos. That should not matter. Educational compliance should not require bribery. Hey, I prefer to think of it as motivation. Besides, you gotta understand pack dynamics. These cubs, they're hardwired to follow pack leaders, and pack leaders are determined by a bunch of factors that, no offense, you don't hit. I am their instructor. Yeah, but you don't smell right. Velthar's antennae went completely still. I beg your pardon? No offense, I said quickly, but to them, you smell like plants and math. Doesn't trigger the instincts. Me? Apparently humans smell like ambition and barely controlled violence with a hint of fast food. It's a whole thing. We did a study on it last cycle. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. Welcome to interspecies relations. It gets weirder. From the line, Silverfang spoke up. Actually, Martinez smells more like tacos and determination, with underlying notes of coffee and mild anxiety. See? I gestured at Silverfang. Tacos and determination. That's going on my business cards. Velthar looked at me, then at the cubs, then back at me. So, you are telling me that the only reason they are following commands now is because they perceive you as a pack leader based on olfactory cues and the promise of foodstuffs? Also because I asked nicely. That helps. This is absurd. This is Tuesday. Velthar's antennae started quivering again. I have a degree in behavioral psychology from the Zenthari Institute. I have trained literally thousands of students across hundreds of species. And you are telling me that all of my expertise means nothing compared to smelling like tacos? Well, when you put it that way, it sounds bad, I admitted. Think of it more like cultural context. These cubs aren't being disrespectful. They literally cannot help it. Their instincts are screaming that you're not pack, so obedience doesn't compute. It's like asking a fish to climb a tree. Sure, you can explain the concept of climbing, give detailed instructions, offer rewards and punishments. But at the end of the day, the fish doesn't have legs. Lichens have legs. It's a metaphor. A terrible one. Yeah, I'm working on it. I turned to the cubs. All right. Let's show Instructor Velthar what else you can do. Krakus, sit. Krakus immediately dropped into a sitting position. Stand. He stood. Nyx, walk to that wall and touch it. She did. Twins, switch positions in line. Thorak and Grimjaw smoothly exchanged places. Rennie, tell me what you had for breakfast. Protein cubes and fermented meat paste, sir. Delicious. Silverfang, stop chasing your tail for the rest of today. Silverfang's ears drooped. But it's fun. I know, buddy, but we gotta show some restraint. Tomorrow you can chase it all you want. Okay, Martinez. I looked at Velthar. See? They're perfectly capable of following instructions. They just need the right context. Velthar was silent for a long moment. Then, very slowly, he said, I hate this. Yeah, I figured. I hate that this works. Also figured. I have dedicated my life to education, to proper pedagogical methods, to the advancement of knowledge through structured learning environments. And you just walked in and solved my problem with tacos. Technically, the promise of tacos. I haven't actually delivered yet. I want to be angry. That's fair. But I also want this session to end so I can go reconsider my life choices in private. Also fair. I turned to the cubs. Okay, you guys have been awesome. Instructor Velthar, you got anything else you wanted to work on with them? Velthar looked at his data pad, then at the cubs, then at me. I had planned 17 more exercises covering formation changes, response time optimization, and command hierarchy recognition. How about we call it a day and count this as a win? How is this a win? Well, when you started, you had 6 cubs doing literally anything except what you asked. Now you have 6 cubs in perfect formation who have demonstrated the ability to follow commands. That's progress, my friend. They only did it because you asked. Details. The point is, they can do it. Now you know that. Tomorrow you try again, maybe with a different approach. Work with their instincts instead of against them. Bring some treats. Make it worth their while. Rome wasn't built in a day, and interspecies cooperation wasn't either. Who is Rome, and why were they building things daily? It's a human saying. Don't worry about it. Velthar's antennae drooped. Fine. Session dismissed. Cubs, you may go. None of them moved. Oh, right, I said. Cubs, you're dismissed. Go do whatever it is you do when you're not driving instructors crazy. Immediately, the line broke up and the cubs started heading for the door. As they passed me, each of them nodded respectfully. Thanks, Martinez, Nick said. No problem. Don't forget about those tacos. We won't. And hey, I called after them, maybe go a little easier on the instructors, yeah? They're trying their best. We'll think about it, Thorak called back. That's all I ask. Once the cubs were gone, I turned back to Velthar. He was still standing there, all four arms crossed, looking like someone had just explained that everything he knew was wrong. You okay? I asked. No. Want to talk about it? No. Want a taco? I'm getting extras. He looked at me with those massive compound eyes. Are tacos truly that significant in human culture? Velthar, my friend, tacos are significant in every culture that has tried them. They're like a universal constant, up there with mathematics and gravity. That cannot possibly be true. And yet, here we are. I started walking toward the door. Come on, cafeteria, my treat. We can talk about alternative teaching strategies over beef and salsa. I suppose I have no other plans, Velthar said, following me, though I maintain that this entire situation is absurd. Oh, completely absurd. Welcome to the Galactic Interspecies Academy, where logic comes to die and tacos solve problems. As we walked down the corridor, Velthar was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Martinez, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why do the cubs respond to you? Is it truly just the scent issue? Or is there something else? I thought about that. Honestly, I think it's because I don't try to force them to be something they're not. Those cubs, they're in a weird position. They're young, far from home, surrounded by species that don't understand their culture. Every instinct is telling them one thing, but the academic environment is demanding another. It's confusing and stressful. So you accommodate their instincts. I work with them, yeah. I mean, it's the whole point of this place, right? We're supposed to be learning how to coexist with different species. That means understanding that different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different. But there must be standards, discipline, structure. Sure. But those things can look different for different species. For lichens, discipline comes through pack structure. You want them to follow commands? Establish yourself as pack. Or find someone who already is and work with them. It's not cheating. It's adaptation. Velthar was silent for another moment. You make it sound simple. It's not. It's messy and complicated, and half the time I have no idea what I'm doing. But that's okay. Nobody expects you to be perfect at interspecies relations right out of the gate. It takes time. How much time? Well, I've been doing this for 7 cycles and I still panic when the Claraxians start their greeting rituals. So, ongoing process. That got a sound from Velthar that I think was laughter. Hard to tell with the translator. That is oddly reassuring. Glad I could help? We reached the cafeteria, and I could already smell the tacos. The Vraxian chef, a big purple guy named Kzt, had really perfected the recipe, which was impressive considering his species didn't actually eat solid food. Martinez, he called out when he saw me. The usual? The usual, and about 8 extras. Cubs are coming. Oh, and whatever Instructor Velthar wants. I do not actually consume solid food, Velthar said. Right. You guys photosynthesize or something? We absorb nutrients through our exoskeleton. It is far more efficient than oral consumption. Man, you're missing out. Tacos are worth having a digestive system for. We got the food, found a table, and I started eating while Velthar stood nearby in what I assumed was his version of polite companionship. Martinez, he said after a while, I want to apologize. For what? I was frustrated with the Cubs, and with you, initially, for making it seem so easy. I let my pride get in the way of effective teaching. Hey, we all have those days. Don't sweat it. I should have recognized the cultural factors at play. That is literally my job. Look, Velthar, here's the thing. You can know all the theory in the world, have all the degrees, all the training, all the expertise. But sometimes, you just gotta ask someone who's been there. I work with these Cubs every day. I've seen what works and what doesn't. That doesn't make me smarter than you. It just means I have different experience. You are being kind. I'm being honest. You're good at what you do. You just hit a situation outside your wheelhouse. Happens to everyone. The important thing is, you're willing to adapt. By bringing treats to class. Exactly, see? You're learning already. Velthar made that laughing sound again. This academy is very strange. You have no idea. Wait until you have to teach the Hudorians. They don't have eyes. How do they read? That's the fun part. You get to figure it out. Right on cue, the Cubs showed up. All 6 of them looking expectant. Told you we wouldn't forget, Nick said. I never doubted you, I replied, sliding the extra tacos over. Here you go, as promised. They dug in with enthusiasm. Watching lichens eat tacos is an experience. They're all teeth and claws, and somehow it still works. Cubs, Velthar said suddenly. I wish to apologize for my behavior earlier. They all looked up, surprised. I did not account for your cultural needs, he continued. I was attempting to apply teaching methods that work for other species without considering what would work best for you. That was unfair. Krakus swallowed a mouthful of taco. You don't have to apologize, Instructor. We were being difficult on purpose. Yeah, admitted Thorak. We kind of knew what you wanted us to do. We just didn't want to do it. Because I did not smell correct. Well, yeah. But also because you were treating us like disobedient Cubs instead of students. Made us want to prove you right, you know? Velthar's antennae drooped again. I see. That was indeed poor judgment on my part. It's okay, Silverfang said through a mouthful of cheese. Martinez does the same thing sometimes. But then he brings tacos, so we forgive him. I feel like I'm being insulted and complimented at the same time, I said. Human specialty. Nix grinned, showing way too many teeth. We all sat there for a while, eating and talking. Well, they ate. Velthar mostly just stood there, but I think he was enjoying himself in his own way. Eventually, Grimjaw asked, Instructor, tomorrow, are we going to do more obedience training? Yes, but I shall modify my approach. Perhaps we can discuss what methods would work best for you. We like games, Rennie said. Competition. Make it interesting. And treats, added Silverfang. Treats help. I shall remember that. Also, Nix said, looking at me, maybe Martinez could sit in? Having a pack leader nearby makes it easier. I'm not your pack leader, I protested. You smell like one. That is both weird and concerning. Welcome to Lycan's Social Dynamics, Krakos said cheerfully. Velthar turned to me. Would you be willing to assist with future sessions, at least until we establish a better working dynamic? I thought about my schedule. It was already packed with 17 different crisis management situations, 2 cultural festivals that were definitely going to end in diplomatic incidents, and a Vraxian poetry slam that I was required to attend for reasons I still didn't understand. But looking at the Cubs, and at Velthar trying his best to adapt, I couldn't say no. Yeah, I can do that. Fair warning, though, I'm not a trained instructor. I mostly just make it up as I go. Given today's results, I believe that may be exactly what we need. And that's how I became the unofficial co-instructor for Lycan obedience training. Me, a guy whose main qualification was smelling like tacos and determination. The next few weeks were interesting. Velthar and I worked together to develop training methods that played to the Cubs' instincts instead of fighting them. We incorporated competition, made it game-like, added rewards that actually motivated them. Velthar even started bringing these nutrient bars that the Cubs loved, though where he found them was a mystery. Slowly, the Cubs started responding to Velthar directly. Not because he smelled right, but because he'd proven himself worthy of respect through patience and adaptation. Which, when you think about it, are pretty good pack leader qualities. I still had to sit in on sessions sometimes. The Cubs liked having me there, and honestly, I liked watching Velthar work. He was good at what he did, once he got over his initial frustration. One day, about a month after the taco incident, I watched as Velthar ran the Cubs through a complex series of commands. Formation changes, tactical movements, the works. And they followed every single instruction perfectly. Excellent work, Velthar told them at the end. You have all improved dramatically. I am proud of your progress. The Cubs practically glowed at the praise. After they left, Velthar turned to me. I could not have done this without your help. Sure you could have. You just needed a push in the right direction. A push that came with tacos. The best kind of push. We stood there for a moment, watching the Cubs disappear down the corridor, probably off to cause problems elsewhere. Martinez, Velthar said. I have been meaning to ask. Why do you work here? At the academy? You could likely find easier employment elsewhere. I shrugged. Because this place matters. We've got dozens of species all trying to figure out how to live together in a galaxy that's getting smaller every day. It's messy and frustrating, and half the time I want to quit. But then you get moments like this, where different beings figure out how to understand each other, and that's worth all the headaches. Even when it involves tacos and stubborn Cubs. Especially then. Velthar's antennae did a little wiggle that I'd learned meant he was pleased. You know, for a species that only joined the galactic community recently, humans have a remarkable talent for this sort of work. What, bribing teenagers with food? No. Finding common ground where none seems to exist. Building bridges between vastly different cultures. Making the impossible seem simple. We just smell right, I joked. Perhaps. Or perhaps there is something to be said for your species' particular brand of determination and adaptability. And tacos. Always the tacos. We left the training hall together, and I thought about what Velthar had said. Humans were still the new kids in the galactic community. We didn't have the longest history or the most advanced technology or the strongest military. We were just sort of figuring things out as we went. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being new meant we hadn't gotten stuck in our ways yet. We were still willing to try weird solutions, to adapt, to find what worked rather than what should work according to theory. And if that meant solving interspecies conflicts with Mexican food and an understanding of pack dynamics, well, stranger things had happened in the galaxy. Though probably not much stranger. Later that evening, I was finishing up some paperwork in my office when I got a message from Director Zinthrop, the head of the academy. Zinthrop was this ancient crystalline being who had been running the place for about a century and had seen everything. The message was short. Heard about the incident with Velthar and the Cubs. Well done. Also, the cafeteria budget has been increased to account for motivational foodstuffs. Carry on. I laughed and leaned back in my chair. Motivational foodstuffs. That was going in my report. You know, when I first signed up for this job, I thought it would be all formal diplomatic meetings and carefully worded treaties. And sure, some of it is that. But a lot of it is just figuring out what makes different beings tick. Understanding that what works for one species might be completely wrong for another. Being willing to try unconventional solutions. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about knowing when to bring tacos. My communication device buzzed. It was Nick's. Martinez, the twins are stuck in a ventilation shaft. Can you help? I sighed. How did they get in a ventilation shaft? We were playing hide and seek. Of course you were. I'll be right there. I grabbed my toolkit, which I'd learned to always keep handy when dealing with cubs, and headed out. Just another Tuesday at the Galactic Interspecies Academy. Where tacos solve problems, instructors learn humility, and humans continue to prove that sometimes the best qualification for dealing with impossible situations is being too stubborn to know when to quit. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Even if I do spend half my time extracting teenagers from ventilation systems. Some things, I guess, really are universal.